Watch this.
The deadline passed, and his name wasn't on the list of candidates running for governor. So, what happened? It gained unanimous support from the Idaho House, something very difficult to do these days. But now a bill that would ban most mugshots for those undergoing mental health crises has stalled. We talked to 2 Idaho sheriffs for their perspective.
And to see the thousands of women and children that have been displaced by this situation, it's heartbreaking.
A pair of brothers from Idaho, known for helping Idahoans in need, are now in Ukraine, helping dozens of women and children evacuate their homes.
Well, we're supposed to be looking at a video, a TikTok video from Mayor Rognstad, Mayor Shelby Rognstad out of Sandpoint. One where he set to the tune of Eminem's Without Me. Problem is, there it is. How about we hit that?
I said this looks like a job for me, so everybody just follow me, cause we need a little controversy, cause it feels so empty without me.
Okay, so well, at least now it is without him, because this is what the situation is when it comes to running for governor. You see, Mayor Rognstad took some time to record that video outside the governor's office last Friday, the day he filed to run to fill the office of governor. Happened to be the same deadline for filing, except as of yesterday, the Secretary of State's office official list of candidates for governor is without him. Here's what we understand happened. Mayor Rognstad intended to file as a Democratic candidate for governor, and he did on the day of the deadline. That would be March 11th on Friday. Problem was, he was already registered as a Republican. So his party affiliation didn't match his filing status. Rognstad registered as a Republican back in March of 2020, just in time to vote in the presidential primary that year. Then in October of last year, Mayor Rognstad claimed to have switched his party affiliation to Democrat, except either it didn't go through or it got lost in the mail or something happened, but the switch was never officially made. So when he did file on Friday as a Democrat, he was still registered as a Republican. According to the Secretary of State's office, all that confusion could have been avoided if, A, Rognstad had made sure his voter affiliation matched his filing form ahead of time, or B, he submitted a party affiliation form that is stated in state code to be turned in with the filing paperwork to make sure a candidate is officially affiliated with a political party. Except according to Secretary of State's records, Rognstad didn't change his voter affiliation until 7:58 Friday evening, nearly 3 hours past the filing deadline. And when trying to certify that list, the Secretary of State's office noticed that discrepancy, and then they tried to call Rognstad to tell him, to let him know, because, well, it was too late to do anything about it, but, at least to let him know. Rognstad's name was not on the official list released Friday evening, unofficial list released Friday evening, and it wasn't on the official list released Monday either. In a letter to the Secretary of State's office sent Sunday, Rognstad's campaign manager, Ethan Schaefer, claimed party affiliation shouldn't matter anyway, because Idaho code only said political party candidates shall declare their party affiliation in their declaration of candidacy and shall be affiliated with a party at the time of filing, just any party. So it shouldn't matter that Rognstad was registered Republican voter but filed to run for governor as a Democrat. However, that's not how the Secretary of State's office interprets that code. They tend to focus on another grammatical article in Idaho Code 34704.
Candidates shall be deemed affiliated with a political party if the candidate submits a party affiliation form along with the declaration of candidacy, and the key there being along with, meaning they would be submitted together. One of the arguments that we've heard is that the party affiliation was irrelevant, and that's just both seems illogical, doesn't seem to line up with what statute has, and on the surface just sounds absurd. Why would we, when we designate on a ballot that someone is a Republican or a Democrat based on the primary, why would we have someone from another party in that primary?
Well, the statute doesn't say that it has to match, does it?
If we go fully up to go back one more sentence in there, all political party candidates shall declare their party affiliation in their declaration of candidacy and shall be affiliated with a party at the time of filing. And then you take the next sentence, a candidate shall be deemed affiliated with the political party, meaning the one that was declared, if the candidate submits a party affiliation form along with. If any party worked, why would you need to change one? You wouldn't need that entire second sentence.
Deputy Secretary of State Chad Houck told us they reviewed their ruling with the Attorney General's office and they concluded their original position per statute that Rognstad didn't file the proper paperwork to qualify as a candidate for governor, and that was going to hold up. However, that belief is still being contested by Rognstad. Fittingly, late this afternoon, we were able to speak with Rognstad about this ruling.
Clearly, the Secretary of State and myself and my attorney have a different interpretation of that code. But it states quite clearly that your party affiliation at the time of filing does not have to match your filing on the form.
If you don't think it matters, why go back and change the voter affiliation?
I knew that there was a problem because it had been too long since, I filed that early that afternoon on Friday. And it was at that point, late in the day, it was, 5 o'clock and after 5 o'clock. And I realized, it should have been posted at that point. Yeah.
Why did you register as a Republican in the first place?
Yeah, good question. So, like most Idahoans, I'm an independent thinker, and I vote for the candidate that I think is going to do the best job, right? And sometimes that's a Republican. Usually it's a Democrat, but oftentimes I don't even have a choice. Oftentimes, I'm here in District 1 up in Bonner County. Oftentimes I don't even have an option to choose a Democrat. There's only Republicans running.
I guess the moral of the story is don't wait to the last minute so you can make corrections if you need to, right?
Fair enough. Yeah, believe me, if I could do it again, I would not have waited till Friday afternoon and filed.
Deputy Houck told us even if Rognstad had filed even earlier in the day, that discrepancy might have been noticed and Rognstad could have refiled before the deadline of 5 p.m. As of right now, there's only one Democratic candidate for governor on the ballot. That's Stephen Haidt from Marsing. Rognstad says he is pursuing all of his options, including legal ones, to be on the Democratic ticket for either the primary or the general election. We also spoke with another Idahoan who filed to run for senator on Friday, but whose paperwork was rejected for the same reason. Dan Proskin was a registered Republican, but he filed on Friday as a Libertarian. And Houck told us more than 400 people filed to run for office before Friday's deadline. Close to 390 of them navigated the paperwork successfully, including a handful that had issues with their paperwork that had to be corrected. They filed them, though, in time to correct them. Well, like another well-known March Madness, it's do or die time at the Idaho State House. It's that time of the legislative session where a collection of bills are either running out the clock on the way to victory, waiting on a last-second half-court shot to advance, or they're just going to call it quits for the year. The technical move, a bill is never giving a hearing in a committee meeting, meaning it has no chance to advance. One Boise lawmaker is asking why her bill, which passed in the House with no votes against it, is not getting a chance to be heard in committee on the Senate. The bill would change Idaho's laws on posting booking photos or mugshots for misdemeanor crimes. Joe Paris spoke with Representative Brooke Green for details on her bill's current standing, but he also spoke with some Idaho sheriffs around the state who raised some concerns about this bill, saying it needs more time to be talked through and debated.
After passing the Idaho House without a single no vote, House Bill 620 is still waiting for movement in the Senate. The bill, sponsored by Boise Democrat Brooke Green, aims to prohibit law enforcement from releasing mugshots for nonviolent misdemeanors.
I have yet to hear an official confirmation if I will be getting a hearing or not.
Green's work on the legislation dates back several years. Green's friend died by suicide after being arrested in 2019 for trespassing and disturbing the peace. Green says that the mugshot taken became entertainment for nightly news, taking advantage of a crisis.
What this does is it really does codify in state statute that our most vulnerable individuals should have a level of protection afforded to them should they find themselves in a crisis.
Representative Green says her bill is in limbo. She's unsure if it'll be heard again this year. She understands there are criticisms of her bill, but she says she wants to hear those and work through those in a public forum, especially considering that it had unanimous support in the House.
A bill should die on its merits, and that is incredibly important, and it's one that we, here at the legislative body, that certainly all of us can support. That is, if a bill is going to go forward, it should go through the process, enable people to participate in the process, and whether or not it survives should be done in an open conversation in both chambers.
Law enforcement unequivocally, in my opinion, is dealing more with mental health issues on the streets as first responders more than anyone else out there. We're the ones who actually run into this on a literally hourly basis throughout the state of Idaho, hourly, day and night.
Canyon County Sheriff Kieran Donahue and Bonneville County Sheriff Sam Hills are State House leaders for the Idaho Sheriff's Association. They both appreciate Green's efforts, but say that the idea would be complicated to work with. The bill says the idea would, quote, protect the booking image of an individual who within 24 hours of booking had been detained or hospitalized for a mental purpose, provided that the crime was a misdemeanor not involving assault or battery.
The largest problem that I see with that is we're not going to necessarily know that. And I think it opens the counties and the sheriffs up to liability, asking us to predict the future. We can't always do that. We may hold a person for a few hours. They could then bond out and then could end up on a mental hold, and we would be completely unaware of it.
Sheriffs say that, for example, if someone is arrested on a misdemeanor, booked, and they bail out, they may have no way of knowing if someone voluntarily checks into a mental health facility or even if they're committed. Green says she wants an opportunity to have this conversation in a Senate committee, especially considering that technical issues prevented the sheriffs from testifying during the House committee hearing on the bill earlier this year.
That to me is incredibly valuable. We should have conversations in the open, and bills should die on their merits. While I recognize it's not dead yet, I recognize the session's not done yet, and I'm somewhat being a little optimistic. This is incredibly personal, but after it was all said and done, I've received several emails and phone calls and people stopping me saying how much they appreciate this.
Sheriff Donahue says he appreciates that, but that realistically at this point in the legislative session, that an in-depth conversation may need to wait. He says he knows law enforcement wants to be there to support mental health in Idaho, something that is a major challenge across Idaho.
We are standing ready to have a seat at that table to address the mental health epidemic in this state. From a law enforcement perspective, we've been at the table for years. We've been on these committees, we've been on these boards, and we'll continue to do so. Let's all join together and solve this this horrific problem, because it is massive, and we can't do it alone, and really neither can the legislature.
I do not want to put any additional burden on our sheriffs. I have a tremendous amount of respect for them. My husband is a sheriff deputy. I recognize the value that they provide for our communities. I also recognize that sometimes we need to change our operational practices to accommodate some of our most vulnerable folks. This is really what that is about. But I don't think it's necessarily as much criticism as much as they recognize their operations. I respect that, but I also want to say, let's sit at the table and find a means in which to achieve the same goal.
All right, Joe, so the obvious question is, how does something skate so cleanly through the House of Representatives but then get stalled in the Senate?
As we highlighted in the story, Representative Green presented this to a House committee first, and during that committee hearing, just by chance, there were some technical issues that prevented the sheriffs that wanted to testify from connecting remotely via the internet. Technology, it happens. So, there's a chance that lawmakers didn't hear one side, or they didn't go and do the research on their own and find out about some of the criticisms of that. So, there's also possible that they considered all of that and they decided that they didn't find issues with it, and that's why it passed. Representative Green also gave some really passionate, speeches about it on the House floor. Long story short, though, the Senate committee, they have the chairman, Chairman Lakey, who gets to decide if it gets a hearing or not. If he sees problems with it or if there's an issue with it, he'll speak on it. I reached out to Chairman Lakey, didn't respond for now, but we'll keep an eye on this one.
All right, yes, we will. All right, thank you very much, Joe. Big news from the Senate in just the last hour or so. The controversial Transgender Bill will not advance this session. Last week, the Idaho House voted to pass House Bill 675, which would make it illegal for anyone under the age of 18 in Idaho to get gender confirmation surgery. It would also put a ban on puberty blockers and hormone treatments, things like that are used to assist in a gender transition. Last week, we heard from Senate President Chuck Winder, who said he believed the odds were very low of the bill being brought up in the Senate. Now, well, we can confirm it. This afternoon, the Senate Majority Caucus issued this statement, and in it they say, while they oppose any and all gender reassignment surgeries, they quote, House Bill 675 undermines parental rights and allows the government to interfere in parents' medical decision-making authority for their children. We believe in parents' rights, and that's the best decisions regarding medical treatments that are options for their children. We believe they are made by the parents with the benefit of their physician's advice and expertise. So a lot of that saying, yeah, just let the parents figure it out on their own, so they don't want to step in the middle of that, which is why the bill now literally and figuratively is in a drawer in the State Affairs Committee and will not see the light of day. They add, they're currently aware no doctors offer this kind of surgery to minors in Idaho. We're still waiting to hear, by the way, what will happen with House Bill 666, the senator called the mischief bill.
They saw the devastation play out on TV, then felt called to serve. So these Idaho brothers hopped on a plane to travel halfway around the world to help perfect strangers trapped in their own country. Today they're on the road, helping evacuate dozens of women and children to safety in Ukraine. Before we get to their story, let's take some time to hear yours. Text us your questions, your comments, your story ideas, really anything. 208-321-5614. Be sure to include your name and hashtag the 208. Keep your messages clear and concise. We may even share yours at the end of the show.
Half a world away, tensions continue to rise. As of today, more than 3 million Ukrainians have fled their country because of the war. And every day, innocent Ukrainians are losing their lives. It was enough for Idaho brothers to pick up and go. Brothers, along with other volunteers, are shuttling refugees from places of danger and bringing them to safety. They've been there since Sunday. Katya Stepovic caught up with one of them as he was shuttling a family to safety in Poland.
Since Sunday.
There's two other vans. Here's basically where we spend the majority of our time.
Rob Sturgill has been doing a lot of this.
We're just stopping to get gas. I've actually been on the road for 2 days straight.
Taking families like these.
So that's Natalia. So Natalia, this is her daughter. And the daughter is Ola, that's right. Ola's young daughter is Veronica.
To find safety in Poland with 6 hours to go.
These ladies had to leave because their home was being bombed. They had to flee to safety. Their husbands are left behind. So right now, I think they've got a big worry of what's going on and if they'll see their husbands again.
He says at the Polish borders, there are checkpoints where soldiers make sure no men are traveling out of Ukraine. That's because they are needed to fight for their country.
To see the thousands of women and children that have been displaced by this situation, it's heartbreaking.
But how are these people feeling? I'm sure you can see a lot of it just by their emotions on their face.
You can see there's just a great resiliency. And they're trying to hang on to hope. And then there's others that you can tell that, I mean, they're just devastated. They're devastated that what's going on to their country and to their home, their livelihoods, their homes are being destroyed. They're being bombed out.
For days, Sturgill and the group of volunteers with Type of Wood Charities have shuttled about 60 refugees to safety with the use of 3 different vans. But he says the most heartbreaking thing is knowing that they won't be able to help every single one.
She was pleading that we could give her a ride, her 2 small children and her mother. And I was trying to explain to her that one of our vans was probably going to be completely full, and I wasn't sure if we were going to have room for them. It was a situation where I saw her with those 2 small children. I said, we got to make this work.
While the journey has been physically and emotionally draining for Rob and the others, he says the need doesn't stop here.
you go, and then about at the end of the day, you got to go into your motel room and you just got to let it out. You just got to let it out because the next day you got to start up and do it again.
Really tough to hear. And with those volunteers are volunteers from all over the country, including some people who served missions in Ukraine from Utah who speak Ukrainian to help them with that language barrier. And take a look at this video we just received not long ago. A Polish family finally welcomed the Ukrainians that were in his van when we spoke. This was taken just minutes ago. So after a long trip, the family finally made it safe and sound to Poland. And while the volunteers use their own money to get there and stay in motels, Brian, 100% of the donations go to the Ukrainian refugees by helping them find safety. If people are interested in donating, we'll link that on our website, obviously, ktvb.com.
That video is awesome. To see those success stories, somebody arrives in safety and is taken care of by another family, that is amazing. But boy, it would be so tough to have to say no to a mother and her kids. I can only imagine. Thank you, Katya. All right, lots of comments today sent in about House Bill 675 getting shelved in the Senate. That's the transgender transition bill that will not get a hearing in a Senate committee. Glad to see common sense still alive in the Idaho Senate, says Bill. A lot of sentiments that say that as well. This one from Elaine: one senator should not be able to block a bill that the House has passed without review from other Judiciary Committee members. That is also in regards to the mental health mugshot bill, I'm assuming. But it's not just one. It is the chairman. That's how parliamentary rule works. He gets to decide what's on the agenda, what they talk about. But you can bet that they talk about these issues, these problems with the bill, and decide whether or not it's worth their time to bring it forward and see if it might even have a chance of advancing. It just seems to me that Idaho should stick to making laws about Idaho and stop trying to make laws that are like Texas laws. If I wanted to live in a state with laws like Texas, I'd live in Texas, says Michael. It's a good point. A lot of that going around these days, isn't there? Sandpoint's mayor is acting like a high schooler who had a paper deadline but didn't respect anyone else and now wants special treatment. And then he goes on questioning his leadership about somebody who can't make a decision, at least one on time, leading the state. Your air spot regarding viewers sending in their comments gets more airtime than the time you spend sharing. Sorry, we don't have any time. We'll see you tomorrow.